on the tracers depend upon actually seeing the rounds impacting. These cannons have short barrels, and because you're firing them from a helicopter, which is a kind of an unstable platform, there's a very wide shot dispersion to it. This becomes a very big factor at range. The further away you are from something, the more the bigger burst you're gonna have to fire to get some kind of saturation at the target end. These cannons are most effective below 1 kilometer in range. Their maximum range is about 2.5 kilometers. Any further than that, you're either not going to see the target, or you're just going to be kind of spraying stuff at them and wasting ammo. Now, what Phil's saying that his BMP target's about 1,200 meters away. Go ahead and sight in on these things. Laze them with tab. And fire about a 30-round burst, each of you. We'll do this in sequence. So Reaper 1, fire when ready.
Oops, firing? Sorry.
Reaper 2.
Reaper 2 firing.
Reaper 3. And 4.
4 fire.
Okay, so you all should have a pretty fair idea of what kind of dispersion you're talking about at around the ideal range for firing these things. Some of you may have hit the vehicles pretty good, some of you may have seen infantry targets fall around it. The key point is it wasn't pinpoint accurate. If you look beyond those vehicles to the northeast, there's a road, you should see some T-72s sitting on it. Get eyes on those now. Someone lays that and give me a range.
1640 from 4.
Alright, we're going to do some rapid
2
sequence.
kilometers.
Rapid sequence is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of you is going to fire a 40-round burst. Tell me when you fired. 1, when you're ready. 3, fire. Okay, now you should have seen that the dispersion opened up a bit out there. You had less density of hits on target. What you'll note, since we're firing from shallow angles from a distance like this, is the beaten zone, which is the area in which the rounds impact, becomes an oval shape, extending from you and in the direction you're firing. So there were a lot of rounds impacting in front of those vehicles and a lot of rounds hitting the forest behind them. If you need a higher density of hits, you gain altitude, if tactically feasible. That will narrow, it'll shorten the beaten zone and put a higher density on whatever you're trying to hit. Some of you are at 2 kilometers. That's getting out there. A little bit further than that, and you'll kind of get the idea that you've dispersed your shots so much that you're more of a harassing element now than a really effective one. The fun thing is, since you're in a helicopter, you can just fucking move closer. Really simple. Threat permitting. The cannon's role, cannons used against infantry and light to medium vehicles. Light vehicles obviously will be destroyed very quickly. You will, any kind of wheeled vehicle, including BRDMs, you can mobility kill them very, very rapidly. Most light armor, BRDMs, some of the lower level BMPs, Vodniks and stuff like that, or up armored Humvees for that matter, will be killed quickly. The key thing to note is that it is typically not a catastrophic kill, which is to say they will not explode into flames when you're hitting them with a cannon. Note that the heavier, the heavier mid-range vehicles, such as a BMP-3, can soak these hits up from a long range. If you're not pouring a real high density of fire on them, it's not going to disable them. A BMP-3 will sit there and take it and return fire and down you. It will down you much faster than you will down it. If it gets desperate and you have to take out a vehicle like that, try and get high above them, try and shoot right down onto them, and aim for the turret. You can disable it, or you can track them. But basically, if you're engaging something that's armored, you probably don't want to be using the cannon for it. An important thing to note about that laser ranging, it compensates for range, but it also compensates for movement. So as you're flying, let's say you're flying north and shooting west, shooting left, you don't have to do much, if any, lead compensation for that. It should auto-calculate that. Another very, very important thing, if any of those pilots were watching through their gun sight as the gunner was firing, they will not see the correct tracers. The pilot is not in a position to adjust the gunner's fires. It's just how ACE works. What the gunner is hitting is unique to him, and that's what matters, but the pilot won't be able to observe that. You probably also noticed when you're firing that some of you hit trees, you'll see the round explode there. The natural thing to think is that the round is exploding there and stopping. Well, this is ARMA. It doesn't quite work that way. Any rounds you fire into trees will have a double effect. They'll explode, upon entering a forest. They'll also continue on past that and explode on the ground. So it's like a bonus feature. As you guys have been firing this, you've seen ricochets, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Because of the geometry of our fires, we're hovering low and firing more or less level with us. There's a very high incident of ricochets. This is the reason why when we're doing any kind of cast for ground, we have to be aware of our location, the target location, and friendly locations. It's unlikely that those ricochets will hit someone and kill them or hurt them, but it's possible. So whenever the situation permits, you do your runs in a fashion where your ricochet fan does not extend onto friendlies. If you need to be firing in some imperfect geometry, if, let's say, friendlies are being horribly murdered, as is apt to happen with us, and you absolutely need to be in there right now firing and your geometry is not perfect, do it. It's better to potentially hurt a few friendlies because you fired, in an imperfect situation than it is to set up for the perfect pass and in the meantime everyone on the ground dies. So just use good judgment with that and you'll be okay. Now when you're firing the cannon, we're always encouraging bursts. Fire 20, 30, 40 round bursts. Don't just sit there and hose it down. The idea behind this is that it prevents you from wasting too much ammo if your ranging was bad. It gives you an opportunity to, set a new range and fire. The other benefit is that it gives time for the smoke to clear between the bursts. So if you fire a burst, wait, let the smoke clear, you can do a battle damage assessment and determine whether you even need to fire again. Sometimes you won't. The further away your target is, the more beneficial it is to fire from a steeper angle, as I said previously. This tightens the beaten zone. This is also good if you're doing casts close to friendlies and you want to, maybe you're firing at an element that's between two friendly elements and you don't have a good way to fire from a more shallow angle. Getting up high is a safer way to do that. That basically wrapped it up for the cannon. Does anyone have any questions about how the cannon works?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
What's a good, for say 2 kilometers, what's a good altitude to have a good dispersion or minimal dispersion?
2 kilometers, you need to get pretty far up there. Do a bit of practice offline and check it out. It'd probably be fairly high. That's the kind of tactic you could only use if you didn't expect there to be a significant AA threat, such as, the Shokas, Tunguskas, or Strelas. Your other option in that situation is just get closer. Movement is almost always a factor of your tactics. You can almost always get closer to a target and change the engagement criteria because of that.
Dslyecxi, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
ARMA and ACE, the laser designator, it does give slant range and not range over the ground, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
What was the question?
He was asking if the laser designator gave slant range instead of range over ground. Slant range is the direct range from you to the target, and that's how the laser works.
I got a quick question, Dslyecxi.
Go ahead.
Just curious about the type of damage this will do on buildings. Do you have any idea how much it'd take to drop a typical building?
It
with the cannon?
wildly varies.